I served as the church treasurer for 30 years. Last Sunday, the pastor's wife so kindly pulled me aside and told me there had been a counting error that only I could explain. The missing amount was my rent, down to the penny. My grandson's gaze was fixed on the room, searching for my embarrassment. Last Sunday, the pastor's wife touched my elbow after the blessing and led me into a small office. The door closed with that soft click that usually accompanies politely delivering bad news. She smiled the smile people put on when they look in the bathroom mirror, wanting to be believed. "There's a counting error," she said, placing a paper envelope on the table like a blanket over a skittish cat. "It may be a small thing, but you'll understand why I'm concerned." She swiped the paper across the blotting paper. I recognized my initials at the bottom, clear as a sermon. The missing amount was highlighted in yellow. It was my rent, down to the last cent. "I trust you," she added quickly, too quickly. "We all do. I just need your help explaining this to the board." Through the window, I saw my grandson Sam standing in the hallway, waiting for my baking pan. 16 years old, his shoulders already broader than his father's, his face shimmering between youthful and masculine like a bell in the wind. His gaze darted from me to the pastor's wife and back again. He didn't come in. He stood there watching my shame without touching it. I folded my hands in my lap because they were shaking, not from fear, from a rage that wouldn't subside. 30 years of trust condensed into a neat little dot the size of my monthly rent. How loud should Grandma ring the bell when sanctity becomes part of your home? "I'll take the sheets home," I said. "I'll sort everything out and email it to you this evening." She tried to press the paper with her palm. "Maybe we should do it together, here?" I met her gaze and lowered my voice. "Silence is where people listen. You called me for help. Let me help. I keep my tools at home." Her hand rose. I took the folder, clutched it to my chest, and opened the office door myself. Sam straightened as if I'd been caught off guard. I nodded toward the parking lot. "Help me?" We walked in silence to my car. He carried the casserole. I carried 3 decades without a hinge loose. At home, I made tea, and set the file on the kitchen table. I did not open it. Instead, I went to the hall closet and slid my hand behind the winter scarves until I felt the cool plastic of the little device my sister had mailed me 2 years ago when I told her the roofers tried to add emergency vents to my bill. A voice recorder, 1 button, no fuss. "Old age is a sport," she'd said. "Wear protection." I set it beside the file. If kindness shows up with a folder, an archive should answer. Then I opened the folder and began to read. The numbers sang. They always do if you've tuned your ear to their choir. Sunday's count sheet, my initials and those of Deacon Mark. The deposit slip, 2 amounts, cash and checks, typed from the little machine by the greeter's table. An email printed from the bank manager reminding us that the armored pickup would be late because of construction. The miscount circled in yellow, cash short by an exact, tidy number. My rent? I closed my eyes and saw my late husband William shaking coins from his pockets onto our kitchen table. Years ago, when we both worked 2 jobs and 10 cents meant 2 more cups of coffee. He'd whistle tunelessly while we sorted the change. "Numbers don't cheat," he'd said once, after a boss shaved his overtime. "People cheat." Numbers tell on them. I stared at the yellow circle until it blurred, then called Sam into the kitchen. "Do you remember who counted with me yesterday?" He leaned on the doorframe. "Deacon Mark." "Who locked the office?" He frowned. "Pastor's wife, she always does. Did anyone take the deposit to the bank yesterday?" His frown deepened. "No. The pickup was late." "Then where was the bag overnight?" "In the safe." "Who has the code?" He ticked it off like a quiz. "Pastor. Pastor's wife, you, and Mark." I nodded and patted the chair. "Sit. I need you to listen." He sat, wary. He's a good boy, beside his mother's hardness. A gentle thing that makes me ache because gentleness is the first thing a liar crushes. "They think I took money," I said. "The exact amount of my rent. That kind of coincidence is an insult to arithmetic." He opened his mouth to protest. I put up a hand. I don't need you to comfort me. I need you to hear me. This will look worse before it looks better. People you trust will ask you to doubt me. You don't have to defend me. Just watch what they do when they think no one's looking." He swallowed. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the little recorder, I looked at my ledger, and I felt beneath both the stubborn, steady ground of my own life. "I'm going to do what I've always done, Salon," I said, i.e., I'm going to count and I'm going to ring the bell. That night, yeah, after Sam went home, I made copies of every sheet. I checked the amounts against the envelopes, and I matched the envelope numbers to the donation registry. One name snagged my eye like a fishhook. A new family, generous to a fault, in cash, every week for the last 6 months. No address on file, no checks. Just envelopes full of crisp bills and a note in the corner. Anonymous by request. It isn't the poor who give like that. It's the guilty. Monday morning, I drove to the bank and asked to see the camera footage for Sunday's afternoon deposit room. The manager, a young man with hair combed into obedience, blinked at me. "We don't usually, You emailed that your pickup was delayed," I said. "We keep our deposits in your overnight drop when that happens. I want to ensure no one loitered by your door." He consulted a policy binder. He consulted his conscience. Then he ushered me into a small room and rewound the tape. We watched the church's cloth bag slide into the slot at noon, Mark's weathered hands doing the slide. We watched the door remain empty until the armored truck arrived at 4. We watched the bank seal the bag into its cart. "Secure," he said, relieved. "Good," I said, and thought. Then the theft happened before the drop or after the count. Back home, I pulled out the envelopes saved temporarily in our locked cabinet before we shred outer shells for privacy. One outer matched a familiar handwriting, pastor's wife's sister Erin, who ran the youth program, with a loyalty that always felt overbright, like a light bulb about to pop. Erin didn't attend service last week. She posted a photo from the lake at noon, but her envelope was in the stack, time-stamped by the greeter's machine. I set the envelope down and felt the first hum of certainty in my bones. When the righteous write your guilt for you, they tend to misspell their own alibi. I made a list of keys. I made a list of who handles what at what time. Then I called Mark. "Coffee?" I asked. He sighed. "I was hoping you'd call." He came over in his work jacket and cap, smelling of sawdust. When he saw the folder on my table, the lines by his mouth grew deeper. "They came to my porch last night," he said, settling into a chair. "Asked if I'd seen anything unusual. Wanted me to sign a statement about the count. I told them what I always tell people who knock after supper. I don't sign my name when my mind is tired. They didn't like that. Who's they? Pastor and his wife." He rubbed his thumb over his knuckle, a habit he had when he was ashamed for other people. "Look, I've been deacon 15 years. I'm not perfect, but I'm not crooked. That bag weighed what it always weighs when we've had a good Sunday. And they're smiling too much." Smiling? The kind that asks you to forget what you know. We sat with that for a moment. Then I showed him the envelope from Erin and the timestamp. He frowned. "She was at the lake. She posted a live video of the boys jumping off the dock. Yet her envelope clocked in at 9:52. He lifted his eyes to mine. "Who runs the greeter's machine?" "Pastor's wife." He let out a low sound that wasn't a word. "Do you trust me, Mark?" I asked. "With my roof," he said. "With my mother's ring. With our church." "Good," I said. "Then help me do something that will look unkind and is exactly the opposite." Tuesday, I baked cookies and carried them to the office for the women's Bible circle. I set the plate on the counter, chatted about knee replacements and grandchildren and the stubborn stained fellowship hall, coffee leaves on white linen. And when the laughter swelled, I asked the pastor's wife if I could check the safe. "Just to make sure the Tuesday deposit bag is ready," I said. She handed me the code like we'd always done, a courteous transaction that felt different now that my mind was measuring the distance between politeness and permission. I opened the safe and saw the bag sitting there, tagged and sealed with the bank's little plastic loop. "Do you need anything else?" she asked, hands folded, chin tilted sweetly. I'll be quick, I said. She left the room. I closed the safe, then opened it again 3 seconds later to make sure muscle memory recorded the rhythm of that door. I needed to know how it felt to move freely in a space they guarded. That night, I made a duplicate deposit bag. I used old church stationery to mimic the tag. I filled it with paper, then layered the top with 10 crisp bills, tens, each marked with a tiny dot from a UV pen. My sister had also sent for fun. On a small sheet folded inside, I wrote a blessing for whoever would touch money that wasn't theirs. May your hands remember what clean feels like, I wrote. May your nights turn on the light. Wednesday afternoon, I swapped the bags while I dusted the safe with a cloth. No one noticed. Habit is a blindfold tailor-made. The real bag I put under my cardigan and walked it to my car. The fake bag I left on the safe floor because thieves bend to easy temptation. I told no one, not even Mark, especially not Sam. Children, even earnest ones, leak truth. That evening, halfway through choir practice, the lights flickered once, the building hummed, I watched the hall. Pastor's wife drifted by with a stack of programs. Erin followed 5 minutes later with nothing in her hands. The safe is behind the office where the programs live. The door to that hall creaked faint, then closed. At home, I sat with the real bag on my lap like a sleeping cat and waited. At 9, my phone buzzed. A text from Pastor's wife. Bag ready for bank, it read. A smiley face, a prayer hands emoji. I did not reply. I drove the real bag to the bank's night drop, slid it in, and let the envelope inside me seal. Thursday morning, I walked into the office with lemon muffins and the kind of face that makes people confess small things to stave off the big one. The pastor's wife smiled. You're sweet, she said. I know, I said, and sat down. The day moved like days do when everyone thinks you're dull. Fast for them, precise for me. I balanced the festival fund. I answered 3 emails and made a note to replace the baptistry towels. At 1, Erin came in with a box of crayons for the children's room. Her fingers were stained blue. She avoided my eyes. At 3, the bank manager called. Just confirming deposit, he said. All amounts matched the slip. Good to go. I thanked him and hung up. I got home and played back the recorder I'd hidden under the plant shelf. I had left it under the edge of a plant shelf in the church office Monday night when I returned after locking up to water. It had recorded 2 days of ordinary secrets. Who takes more sugar than they admit, who grieves in silence in the copy room, who flips through hymnals to look like they're working. Also, Wednesday at 7:12 p.m., the office door opening, steps, the safe code punched, the bag lifted, the soft thrill in a woman's breath that always accompanies forbidden touch, and a second voice, quiet, nervous, asking, "Are you sure?" I recognized both voices. I sat very still. Then I stood and walked to the sanctuary. When I'm about to do something irreversible, I like to check if God is home. I didn't kneel. Kneeling is for asking. I was done asking. The women's circle was setting up for Friday's soup luncheon, paper bowls, spoons, those little packets of crackers that always come stale. Pastor's wife was there, of course, offering help she could photograph for the newsletter. Erin arranged napkins like she was laying out excuses. I cleared my throat. Ladies, I said, could you step into the sanctuary with me? I want to test the bell rope before Sunday. Takes more than one set of hands. They followed, chattering. In the sanctuary, the air was cool and fragrant with lemon oil and old wood. The bell rope hung from the ceiling, thick and woven, a braided memory of all the prayers it had called through the years. I took hold of it. I did not pull. I have something to show you, I said instead, and set my phone on the front pew. I pressed play. At first, it was nothing. Chairs, papers, the rustle of an office trying to be useful, then the safe code, then the lift, then the voices. Erin went pale. Pastor's wife smiled wider, which is what some people mistake for courage when they are drying the last drops from a lie. That could be anyone, she said. It could be, I agreed, if I didn't also have this. I took the fake bag from under my cardigan. I had retrieved it that morning after choir practice, knowing they would return it empty, certain no one would check. They had not. The top 10 tens were gone, the paper beneath undisturbed. Under the top layer, on the folded note, the UV pen left its comma of light. I held the bag up. Blessing for unclean hands, well, I said softly, would you like me to read it? For a second, no one moved. Then Erin made a small sound like a cork letting go in a dry bottle. She stepped forward. I'm sorry, she said to me. Not to the pastor's wife, not to the group, to me, as if I had been the only person in the room the whole time. She said it would get fixed after the renovation fund finished. She said the cash would get evened out with the anonymous envelopes. She said, her voice broke and she pressed her fist to her mouth. She said you had enough, that you had no mortgage, that nobody would notice the pastor's wife didn't flinch. Erin, she said gently, that gentle that made me want to throw the entire sanctuary at her, you are tired. You don't know what you're saying. Erin's hand dropped. I know exactly what I'm saying. Renovation fund? I asked. The new fellowship hall wing, Erin whispered. The bids came in higher. She said if we didn't show the donors progress, they'd pull out. She said pastor would be humiliated. She choked again. She said the Lord helps those who help themselves. That verse isn't in the Bible, I said. Pastor's wife's smile cracked, a hairline fissure, then smoothed. This is not the place. It is exactly the place, I said, and wrapped the bell rope around my hands. And it is exactly the time. I pulled. The bell answered, blunt and bright. It poured into the sanctuary and down the hall and out into the street. It filled my throat and pushed tears into my eyes, hot and righteous. People looked up from their chores and their lives and took one step toward the sound, then another, because a bell is an old, old form of truth. The first person into the sanctuary was Mark. The second was the pastor. He walked quickly, confusion already defended with indignation. Behind him, Sam slipped in, eyes wide. Pastor took in the scene, the bag, the recorder, Erin's face, my hands on the rope. What is this? He demanded, and the part of me that had once loved a man who also used questions as shields had answers stored and ready. This is accounting, I said. This is a grandmother ringing the bell. The room seemed to tilt, the way rooms do when a lie loses air. Pastor's wife moved toward the pew to silence the recorder. Mark stepped between them. Don't, he said. A single word can be a door. Pastor's wife paused. She glanced at Pastor, just once, just long enough for secret to show its seam. I believe we should discuss this privately, Pastor said, softening his voice so I would remember I was supposed to be small. No, I said, we will discuss this with the people whose money you have been stewarding, with the people whose trust weighs more than the bell. It happened fast after that, and slow inside me. Pastor's wife tried to gather allies with her eyes. Erin burst into tears and confessed the safe, the swaps, the anonymous envelopes she and the pastor's wife had counted on Tuesdays to save time. Mark told what he'd seen and what the bag had weighed and who had the codes. The women of the circle stood shoulder to shoulder, not to attack anyone, but to close ranks around a truth that had been shivering in the doorway for months. Pastor's face changed. He didn't go red. He went gray. Did you know? I asked him. He stared at the bag and the recorder as if they were relics of a faith he had never practiced. We needed the wing, he said too quickly. You can't imagine the pressure from the donors. They want growth. They want evidence. They want honesty, I said. He swallowed. Shame is thirsty. You accused me, I said. You chose my rent amount and painted it on my back like a target. His mouth opened. I didn't. She did, Erin said, looking at his wife. Pastor's wife took a breath, as if she might still turn this into a lesson about forgiveness. This is a misunderstanding, she began. No, I said. This is theft dressed as stewardship. This is using God's name as a bandage for a broken dam. This is telling a boy to watch his grandmother hang Sam's face crumpled for a second, then set. He moved to my side, not bravely, ordinarily, in that teenage way that says, now I know who I am here. We must call the bank, I said to Mark. We must call the board. We must call the donors. And we must call the police if the board will not do its duty. There was a murmur. There is always a murmur when the word police enters a church. We are trained to keep things inside, to launder sin in the baptistry and hang it on the line between potluck and choir. But the bell had rung, the sound had gone out, and when a bell calls people in, it also calls witnesses. I will not tell you every document we assembled or every statement collected. That is not the spine of the story. The spine is this. The lie bent. It did not break until people looked it in the eye. By Sunday, the board had convened a meeting with members. The sanctuary was full and quiet, as if grief had baked a pie and passed it through the pews. Pastor stood at the pulpit and read a statement that used words like confusion and misunderstanding and temporary accounting discrepancies and good faith efforts. I stood at the side aisle and held my ledger like a weapon made of paper. When he finished, I asked for the microphone. "I'll be brief," I said. And for once, everyone believed me. On Wednesday, the safe was opened outside approved hours, I said. The deposit bag was tampered with. We have audio, we have timestamps, we have cash marked in a way that can be traced. The bag delivered to the bank matched the slip because I removed it before the tampering and delivered it myself. The bag left in the safe was a decoy. The people who touched it know it because they took the bait a ripple, then silence the size of a continent. I have been accused of taking money equivalent to my rent, I continued. The person who chose that number chose a cruelty so neat it could only have been drawn by someone who does not know poverty but knows how to weaponize it. I let that sit until the pews stopped shifting. I invite the board to examine the evidence now. I place the recorder and the bag on the communion table. 2 board members, one a retired teacher, the other a plumber, came forward. Practical people understand the holiness of process. They did not need the bishop, they needed their eyes and ears. After, the plumber spoke. "We will vote to suspend the pastor and his wife pending an external audit," he said. "We will ask an independent auditor to examine the last year of cash handling. We will call the police. And we will apologize to our treasurer." He cleared his throat. Publicly. Some wept. Erin's shoulders shook so hard I thought she might come apart. I went to her and took her hand. She clung like a drowning person to a tree root that is held for 100 floods. I did not hug the pastor's wife. Her eyes were still moving, calculating odds. Pity can be a ladder for some. For her, it would be a net. The weeks that followed were heavy and brisk. The audit found what numbers always find: patterns. Anonymous envelopes that weren't anonymous, just unlogged. Round-offs that became habits. A renovation fund advanced from operating cash with every intention of reconciling later. The external accountant called it what it was: misappropriation, not miscalculation. The bank traced the marked bills to a coffee shop purchase and a hardware store sale rung up on pastor's wife's card within an hour of the bell. People who had clucked their tongues at my supposed failing found other tongues to cluck with when truth let them. People who had been silent brought receipts from their own small uneasinesses and laid them on the table like offerings. The police came, polite and uncomfortable, because arresting religious staff is like walking into your grandmother's living room and stepping on a cat. They asked questions, they took statements, they left with boxes labeled with the kind of dry grease pencil that makes your stomach hollow. I slept for the first time without waking at 2 and rehearsing a sermon I never wanted to give. Sam asked if we were still going to church. "We are," I said. "Church is not the people who tried to break it. Church is the ones who stayed to repair it." He nodded and carried my Bible to the car. We held services with an interim preacher, a woman with gray hair and an honest laugh. She preached about Zacchaeus and returned money and the kind of repentance that includes receipts. People listened in that new way you only hear when everyone in the room has recently been an idiot and survived it. One evening, Pastor came to my porch. He stood on the step like a boy with a broken bat. I did not invite him in. I did not leave him standing either. I came out and sat in my chair, the one that creaks like it's trying not to gossip. "I didn't know how to stop it," he said. "You don't stop theft by turning off the alarm," I said. "You stop it by opening the door." He stared at his shoes. "I thought if the wing got built, the giving would increase and we could pay back a lie with interest?" He flinched. "I'm sorry." "I believe you," I said, and let the words sit between us like a small animal we were both careful not to startle. But your sorry goes to the police and the board and the people who believed you. Mine went to the bell. We each pay the debt we owe. He nodded. In another life, he might have been a good man who would have fed the hungry without counting his name on their tongues. In this life, he had let a woman put his soul on layaway and never calculated the interest. The case wound through the system the way pipes carry water, slow with pressure and prone to banging in old houses. There were plea negotiations, and the board's counsel recommended accepting them to keep the church from becoming a circus. Pastor's wife pled guilty to 2 counts. Pastor pled to negligence and oversight. Restitution was ordered, community service assigned, no prison bars clanged, and some were angry about that. I was not. Justice is not always a cell. Sometimes it is living where everyone knows the bell rang because of you. We changed things at church. We rotated counters. We installed a second camera and a third. We required 2 signatures for safe access and 3 for any transfer between funds. We stopped accepting anonymous envelopes for 6 months and taught a class on stewardship that included the line, "God does not need your cash to be untraceable to bless it." People laughed a true laugh at that, and when we brought the envelopes back, everyone had a line for a phone number in case of questions. Not to surveil, to shepherd. On the first Sunday after the plea, I walked into the sanctuary early and touched the bell rope as I passed. My hand remembered its weight, the way work remembers the old body that did it. Sam slipped in beside me. "You looked like a general that day," he said, grinning a little. "I looked like a woman who has counted too many coins to let someone pretend math is magic," I said. He bumped my shoulder with his. "I'm proud of you. I am not a woman who needs anyone's pride to stand, but the small light that turned on inside me at that boy's words warmed me all the way down." After the service, a young couple approached me. They had been the anonymous donors. She twisted her ring. He cleared his throat. "We were embarrassed," he said. "We didn't want anyone to know we finally got on our feet. We thought hiding our giving made it pure. We're sorry our secrecy became someone else's cover. Purity doesn't need shadows," I said gently. "It needs daylight." They nodded, relieved to be told something so simple it sounded like a door opening. Later, in my kitchen, I pulled my ledger from the drawer and wrote one more unsanctioned line in the margin where no auditor would ever look. "When the righteous forge your guilt to spend your grace, ring the bell. It will wake the ones still honest enough to hear." That night, the house was quiet. My rent was paid from my own bank account, where it had always waited. The tea kettle hissed. I stood at the window and watched the street lamps gild the leaves, and I thought of all the years I had counted other people's money with the care of a mother counting a baby's breaths. I thought of how betrayal sounds through a wall and how confession changes the air. I thought of William scattering coins on our table and whistling and saying numbers. Don't cheat. People do. And I thought of my grandson, taller now, looking at me, not as a relic, but as a road sign. We are not done being foolish. We are not done being brave. Both truths fit in the same pew. On the following Wednesday, I received a letter. It was written in the heavy hand of someone who presses their pen as if trying to make paper remember them. It came from Pastor's wife. There were no flowers on the stationery, no Bible verses in the margin, just my name and her apology. She said she had thought ends could justify means and didn't notice when the means became the ends. She had watched me ring the bell and envied my certainty. She wanted, she wrote, to learn how to live in a world where the bell rings without hating the ringer. I set the letter on the table. I thought about answering. I did not. Forgiveness is a road under construction, with detours and flagmen and long waits. I can forgive with my hands busy, counting. I can forgive with my throat open, singing. I cannot forgive on demand. On Sunday, the interim preacher asked if someone would come forward to ring the bell. Hands lifted, mine did not. A little boy ran up the aisle and grabbed the rope with both fists, and the sound that rolled out of the tower was so pure and so like the bell's voice the day I pulled that I felt tears prick again. fresh and unstale. I reached for Sam's hand. He let me hold it for a whole minute before looking around, embarrassed and pleased at once. That is a grandmother's triumph, quiet and weighty. Your hand holds a future that isn't ashamed of you. As people filed out, a few touched my shoulder or pressed my palm or slipped a folded note that said thank you, not just for the money, but for the bell. People like to imagine courage feels like fireworks. It feels like kitchen chairs and ledger paper and a rope in your hands while your knees think about buckling and don't. I am no hero. I am a treasurer. That word has two meanings, and I have lived both. I count what's given. I hold what matters. If you ever find yourself in a room where someone has laid a neat accusation over your life like a sacrament, ask yourself the question I asked as the door clicked behind my polite accuser. How loudly should a grandmother ring the bell? Then put your hands on the rope. Pull until the sound is big enough to gather the ones who will stand with you. Pull until the ones who would hide must choose to leave or listen. Pull until your own bones believe you again. Justice did not arrive with a trumpet. It arrived on little feet, apologies, receipts, a new lock on a safe, a boy's hand in mine. It was enough. It was exactly enough.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.